Hello everyone and welcome to lesson 2 of this hypothetical choreography. So just a reminder that this will be in section A of your theory exam paper. So hopefully you remember this from last video, but just recapping that, hypothetical choreography is just a made up piece of choreography that you'll have to do on the day. You will get that stimulus, whatever that may be. Might be a sentence, a word, an object, person, poem, picture, anything might be on that front piece of paper, and you'll have to create a made up dance based on that stimulus. Couple of tips and just some facts. It will only be short answer questions, so no extended writing questions, just kind of 1 to 4 mark questions. Short, snappy responses will be needed. The marks at the side, they're kind of highlighting how long you should spend. 1 mark, simple, quick answer, normally taking probably under a minute, and then 4 marks up to 4 minutes. Just a tip of don't waste time on being over creative. Try and think of a choreographic intention that is simple, that is clear, that you can answer a variety of questions to. When you're writing the motif, again, we went through that on the last video, but I'm going to go through that again. Keep that short and snappy, but also it can't just be one movement, it has to be a couple of movements that is sequential. And remember that all of these questions link to that stimulus, and that first question really sets the scene of what is your choreographic intention, so what you're going to have to talk about for the rest of the section A in the paper. Okay, so just reminding ourselves what a stimulus is. So it's an inspiration for an idea or movement. It's that starting point. What can we think of different stimuluses? I've been through a couple already, but there could be several. So percussive sounds, voice, movement ideas, dynamic qualities, words, shapes, patterns, can have anything on that piece of paper that they choose for you. We're going to go with today this poem. So her whispered words fall silently on the floor like autumn leaves. The night breeze blows and gently rustles her empty lies. So if you were to get that stimulus, the first thing I would do is annotate around that stimulus quickly. What does that make you feel like? What is your initial reaction to this stimulus? And what could be a choreographic intention? So just pause the video and think about the first thing that comes in your mind. What is the choreographic intention of this piece? Okay, let's go through some of the questions then. So outline a choreographic intention for your duet, which refers to the stimulus and the use of 2 dancers. Okay, so I've highlighted there in bold some of the key points. So you need to create a choreographic intention. This is not just repeating the poem. This is creating an idea or a meaning, an intention that you want to show the audience based around that poem that you've seen. For your duets, you know now that it's for 2 dances, which refers to the stimulus. So you have to link it back to the poem, and then you have to show your use of 2 dancers. So 1 mark for a choreographic intention. 2nd mark if you refer back to the stimulus where you got that choreographic intention from. And the 3rd and final mark is how you're going to use those 2 dances. So essential to read the question. Do not go into the exam being like, yep, it's a trio. I know this one because I practiced a trio, for example. It could be anything. In last year's paper, it was a solo. In the first year, it was a trio. It could be a group dance. So please make sure you are reading the questions in detail. So a choreographic intention could be a mood that you want to show, a meaning, an idea, a theme, or could be a style as well. So describe a motif that you could choreograph for your dance. Your answer should refer to action, space, dynamics. Remember, all of these questions are following on. So whatever choreographic intention you've named in the first question, now is this choreographic intention for the next kind of 8 questions. So describing a motif, action, space, dynamics. 1 mark for the action, 2nd mark for the space, 3rd mark for the dynamics. Remember, this motif must be a sequential motif, must be sequenced. You must be able to read it and be able to visualize, oh yeah, I can see that dancer doing that motif. Okay, you can't just put walk, left, soft. Okay, that's not going to get you the marks at all. You have to write a detailed motif. But like the tips at the beginning, I don't want 8 or 9 movements. I want maybe 2 to 3 movements, a short motif explained using action space dynamics. Give 2 ways you could use choreographic devices to develop the motif you have described. This is why it's essential to know all your choreographic devices, because it's asking you for 2 here, and you can't just name them. You have to link them to the motif and be able to effectively use them and write this down. So 2 different ways. So use 2 different choreographic devices. You cannot use the same choreographic device twice. And it must link back to the motif. Okay, so don't go talking about a kick unless you've talked about that kick in the motif. You have to talk about whatever movements you've done in that motif. So let's quickly go through the choreographic devices. So you could use motif development, repetition, contrast, highlights, climax, manipulation of number, unison, canon. Okay, so make sure you've used 2 different ones. You might talk about repeating a certain movement in the motif, name that movement, bam, 1 mark. Then you might talk about doing another movement from that motif in canon. Okay, next question. Describe how you would use the first 2 stages of the choreographic process to create your choreography. Okay, so first 2 stages of the choreographic process. Okay, so you have to know that choreographic process. I know year 9s at the moment you've created your little gesture dances that you did in lesson. I think year 10s have done that too, so it's really good to have things like that. So as soon as you see that choreographic process, you could quickly do that dance and be like, oh yeah, I know the first 2 stages. Because if you don't know the first 2 stages, you will really struggle with this question. So you must first of all identify the first 2 stages of the choreographic process, and then a short description, really short description of how you would apply them. Remember, this is only 2 marks. If it was a 4 mark, you would be looking at more detailed descriptions, but because it's just that 2 marks, you need to identify the 2 stages and give a brief description of how you would apply them. So the first 2 stages are researching and improvising. So you would just briefly explain researching around the poem, for example, and then improvising. I don't know, if you selected the choreographic intention of showing the growth of the trees, you might look at improvising around dynamic words such as growth. Okay, next question. Name the type of aural setting you would use in your dance. 1 mark answer. Okay, so all you need to do is state a type of aural setting. Again, essential that you know all the different types of aural settings. Again, just reminding you of the tip, all of these questions relate. Okay, so if you've talked about, say, the growth of the tree, what an aural setting that would be most obvious for me would be natural sounds, and you could use the wind, for example. So always make sure that all of these are relating. It just makes it easier. Also, this is a double question, so whatever you answer for this question, it leads on to the next question. That's also important in this section, that some of them link together. So we'll see that in a second. So my tip would be that only select an oral setting that you know you can talk about. So I wouldn't pick natural sound if I don't know what the hell natural sound is. Okay? So here we go, the next question. You've stated natural sound in the question before. So now you need to describe one way in which your chosen oral setting, natural sound, could support the communication of choreographic intent outlined in question 1. So again, these link together. So from the previous question, whatever element of oral sound or oral setting you have selected, you now must talk about it in this question. Okay, and you're going to get these 2 marks from giving a detailed answer which refers how it supports the choreographic intention. And how it could do that is it could support the mood, the atmosphere, could give contrast to variety, could link to the structure, could develop the relationship of the theme and idea. Okay, so that's quite a difficult one. You must link to the oral setting you previously talked about. It must link to the communication of the choreographic intention, and it also must have an effect on a choreographic outcome. Okay, this is another linking question. So this is name a structuring device you could use in your solo. 1 mark, just state a structuring device. So you might state episodic, for example. You're only going to select episodic if you know about episodic and you can talk about it in the following question. So pick one that relates to your choreographic intention and pick one that you know about. Because then when we get to this question, describe one way your chosen structural device could support the choreographic intention outlined in question 1. So you're going to have to now talk about whatever structuring device you've picked from the last question. So 2 marks for a more detailed description of how the structuring device supports the choreographic intent. And that must clearly link with that choreographic intention that you mentioned all those questions ago. So really be clear with that. Okay, that is the end of lesson 2. So go back through this. If there are any difficulties or misunderstandings, you can email me any questions you have. There are also past papers, so if you think you want to try this out, get your hands on some past papers. I can send you the link for those and you can have a practice.